Screening as part of the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival in July is a film called These Two Hands, the story of Bowen therapy. And it's my great pleasure to be speaking to the director of that film, Sean Dobra. Sean, welcome to Movie Metropolis.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks for having me today.
Tell me about the origins of this documentary. How did it all come about?
Very interesting story because it wasn't anything that was actually planned. My sister is a Bowen therapist, and I was visiting her place in Wooli, a beautiful town. And because I'm a filmmaker and have a video background, at that time, she asked if I could make a video for her business. So I did, and I filmed her and I interviewed her about Bowen therapy, what she was doing, which I didn't know anything about, really. And then as I started to interview her, I got more interested in what it was. And then when she told me it was created by an Australian guy, I was like, wow, that's interesting. An Australian guy created a therapy, and he was from Geelong, which, I'm not, I live in Melbourne, so I'm not far from Geelong. And so from there, she thought, how great would it be to have a story, a documentary about Bowen therapy? And I thought, how great would it be to tell the story about this guy, Tom Bowen? And the more that I asked questions, the more I discovered how mysterious this guy was, but also that he was a genius and an Australian genius. So I was very intrigued to tell this amazing Australian story.
How interesting that you did that, and you also used dramatization as well, which is an important part of telling the story. So tell me about your process in making the film.
Well, the film kind of evolved as we went along, but in my mind, I always had a vision to, I love telling stories that actually have actors involved in narratives and that visually tell a story rather than just a documentary where it's being told just by talking faces in the interviews. So it naturally, in my mind, the moment I was going to make the documentary, I knew that it had to have that element to it. And so to me, I think docudramas are just really powerful way to tell a story and educate people in a way that's entertaining.
Okay, so tell me about then the way you scripted it and told the story and the casting as well.
Okay, so we've done a few interviews, and we got commissioned to go to a Cairns conference when we met Ozzy and Elaine, and we got to interview them. And so in that interview, I got to listen and hear from the story of Oswald Wrench, who actually worked directly with Tom Bowen, and the story of those two. And so from there, that's actually the moment where we realized that we want to write an actual script about their story and telling their version of Tom Bowen, because there's not many people, alive today that actually worked with Tom Bowen or knew him directly. So that's how it all unfolded. And then I actually wrote the story with my sister. We wrote a whole script for it, but also, that script was just supposed to be a guideline, because as you would know with documentaries, you don't know where they're going to go when you're interviewing people unless you're going to give them the stuff to say. But we didn't cue anyone on anything. Everyone that we interviewed was just natural interviews. So the story, but yet the story still kind of went very similar to how our script was.
Okay. And so tell me about the more about the therapy itself, because I found that so interesting. I hadn't heard of it before, but this very hands-on therapy, which is deeper than that, so to speak. Tell me about it.
Yeah, that was the other interesting thing as well. It was almost like an Australian secret, because it's all around the world. A lot of people are using. There's over 30,000 people that have been trained in it, probably a lot more because there's now numerous versions of it. And yeah, about 20 to 30% of Australians know what it is. And so the therapy is a very gentle therapy that works on the body, but it's not working like with other massage and osteo that seem to work more about maneuvering muscles and stuff. This is actually working on the fascia of the body. And so with new science is understanding now that the fascia is actually the matrix of the entire body, which holds the body together. And it's this very soft tissue, like a spider web, that literally goes in every aspect of the body, including your eyes, your nose. It's everywhere. And so what happens is when you have an injury, wherever the injury is, the fascia in that area will be dried up, which means it's not having liquid water flowing through it freely, kind of like if you think about like a river in a forest. And if the river dries up, the forest begins to die. Well, that's kind of what's happening in a part of the body where the injury is. And if you can get the river flowing again, then you can bring life back to the body. The body starts to heal itself, because that's what the body's designed to do, just like the earth will heal itself if you give it water. And so what the Bowen move does is it allows the fascia to be rehydrated. And when that area of the fascia is rehydrated, automatically it begins to heal itself. And that's why people tend to have results where they can't get results from anything else.
Uh-huh. How very interesting. How well recognized is Bowen therapy in the medical profession?
Well, it's becoming really, really, like, it's still, there hasn't been enough scientific research done on it to determine, but there has been some science done on it, especially with babies, in terms of looking at, whether babies are impacted by not. And there's a massive results in babies, especially with colic and removing colic from babies. But it's still being recognized and still being used in some hospitals and around the world. So it's a slow process, but it's becoming more and more recognized as the therapy evolves. But then again, it's not a very old therapy. It's only been around for 30 to 40 years in terms of being used more than people apart from Tom Bowen.
Right, right. Oh, really, really so interesting. I learned a lot from watching watching the documentary. It's now tell me about finding the right people for the dramatized sections of the film, which is quite significant, because filming that and making it come to life, I suppose, is so important.
It is, and we had to use a touch of magic to make it happen and have it turn out well, I believe that it turned out quite great, considering the budget that we were using. So the process in casting was I actually used Star Now to find most of the actors, and it was just a process of putting out different ads and seeing who would apply, and then looking at those people, seeing what people fit the bill, and then having those people come and do an audition. And I think the most challenging part for us was finding Tom Bowen, because we couldn't find someone who actually matched the character of Tom Bowen. It was a real challenge for us, and we actually wanted to get an older guy than what we ended up getting, and that's what I was aiming for. And there wasn't that many that were applying with the budget that we had. And then this younger guy who I've actually worked with before applied on the ad, and I knew who he was, and I said, I wonder if he could do it. And I got him to send me a picture with glasses on, because I knew him directly. I sent him a personal message, and he sent it to me, and I sent it to my sister, and Helen looked at it and she just said yes. And so we auditioned him, and he was fantastic. That's Ben D. Costella.
Okay, no, it works very well. So tell me about how long it took to shoot the film and to put it all together, because it must have been quite a logistical exercise for you.
Yes, it was a massive process. The whole project took about 6 years from start to finish. The filming aspect, probably the interview filming aspect, took about 2 years, because we had to kind of find out who were the key people in this industry and connect with them. And it wasn't always easy getting contact details and things like that. So that's where Helen, who's my sister, really powerhoused and found out who the people were that we needed to speak to. And then we had to go through the process of speaking with them. Then we had to fly to wherever they were and interview them and set all that up. So to have all those interviews done, we had probably about over 50 interviews, and that took approximately 2 years. And then there was another gap of about a year to actually get the acting side of it done, because we'd run out of funding by that time. So we had to redo another crowdfunding campaign, raise more money, and we got just enough money to be able to make the filming aspect of it and get that complete. So that was another 2 years after that. And here we are today.
Here we are today.
Done, complete.
Complete at last. What a process.
Yeah.
And tell me also about the editing process, because I speak to many filmmakers about documentary film making and editing, and that in itself is quite a task.
Yeah, editing something like this is a huge task and a logistical challenge, because you've got like I said, 50 different interviews. That's almost 50 hours of footage to go through, and then you have to try to find the pieces that connect to tell the story that you're trying to tell. And also, you don't even know what the full story is. You only have a concept in your mind. So it's for me, it was going through every single interview and color coding the bits of information that were really interesting and really stood out, and then color coding them in a way so that it matched with the other interviews who also said similar things or on the same sort of topic, and then bringing those together in different sequences, and then bringing those sequences together in a big timeline that ends up being about an hour and a half, and then changing things and just going back and forth and going over and over that process until you have it right. And then that's when you have all the interviews done that tell the story. And then it's okay, was that part done. And then it was like, okay, now we got to actually go and film the film part, which actually goes on the top of this story and really gives color and life to the whole documentary, turning it into a docudrama.
Wow. Again, so interesting to hear that. Now, apart from screening at the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival in July, how else has the film or will the film be screened?
Currently, it's only been screened privately to members of the Bowen therapy community and also to the cast and crew. This is actually the first official live screening ever. So it has gone into some film award ceremonies in the US, and it's won a couple of awards now for people have given it the best documentary and best docudrama in the Cosmic Film Festival and in LAFA, the Los Angeles Film Awards. But this will be the premiere screening really of the film ever. So we're really excited, and we're really, really happy to be doing it with the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival. I just think it's so fitting because it really is a Melbourne-based film. Even though Tom Bowen worked in Geelong, he often traveled to Melbourne, and Ozzy and Elaine often came to Melbourne as well. That's where they first met, who are two key people in the story. So it's very, it is a Melbourne-based story, really.
Okay, absolutely. No, it's great that it is screening at MDFF. When you said you've screened the film to the Bowen family, etc., what responses did you get?
Oh, well, only not the whole Bowen therapy community. It's a sort of smaller group of Bowen therapists, and that was also sort of
Yeah.
our feedback thing as well. Not really a fair feedback because they all love Bowen therapy. They're Bowen therapists, and they all have an understanding of the story. But I think the feedback was beautiful. And this is something Helen was a little bit worried about because there is a lot of different versions of what people thought about Tom, the way that they feel that he did the work, the way that they think that he learned the work, and it was all a bit of a mystery. There wasn't a lot of information out there. So trying to tell a story, Helen was really worried that there were going to be a lot of people that were unhappy with her for not telling the right story, not getting the information correct, all this and all that. But we've not had one negative feedback from anybody in the Bowen therapy community, which is kind of mind-blowing considering all the different ideas that are out there. So they've just been really supportive. They love the film, and we've got after showing that screening, we got a lot of beautiful emails and messages about how touched people were, how it made them cry, how they're just so happy that this story's been told and shared, and how this story of Tom Bowen is going to make a difference in the world. I mean, not just for teaching people about and educating people about a therapy that can help them, but also his personal story is a real humanitarian story of love for people. And I think it's so important, that we keep that alive in today's digital world.
Well done on that, and certainly it will have that opportunity to get the audience as part of the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival in July. So, Sean, for you, have you got another film in progress?
I do, and it's to be honest, this film started around the same time as the other film started. So I was dealing with depression when I was 30. I got hit with depression very hard, and after that, I had an experience which shifted my understanding and view of depression. I went from really heavily depressed to actually very happy within a short space of time. And I wanted to find out what happened to me, and I wanted to really dive into this whole thing of mental health and depression and see if what happened to me can happen to other people, and if we can kind of speed up the process in terms of people really finding themselves again. And what is it that's really at the core of depression? So the film's called From Depression with Love, and it's also a docudrama, similar style to to these two hands film. And yeah, I'm really excited to see how it goes out in the world. I think it's got the power to shift the paradigm of mental health and how we see it. It kind of begins to, it goes down the whole medical process, and it goes, into the whole thing, because we've got doctors and psychologists and life coaches. But at the end of it, there seems to be an alignment with all of them that what's missing there is a lack of connection, and a lack of love, and really a lack of a spiritual connection. And when I say spiritual connection, I don't mean anything woo-woo. I mean a connection with life and a connection with other people, that deep sense of feeling connected to the universe and to the world and to people. And I think if people can find that, the depression ends very quickly, and life becomes easy and happy and joyful.
How interesting to hear that. When will that film be available?
That film will be available by October, which is kind of fitting because October is the mental health month. So yeah, to have it finished by then, and that kind of just happened randomly. So yeah, and I'm actually going to see the editor over the weekend to start working on it. I've got a different. I've done the most of the editing myself, but I have an editor called Christian Filipino who kind of finalizes my edits for me. He's just amazing, and he does the color grading.
Okay. I look forward to that. We might chat again when that film is available. That would be good.
That would be great.
Yeah. Just going back to these two hands, I just wanted to ask you, I forgot to ask you about the music. Tell me about putting that music into the film.
Oh, well, the music process, that's an interesting one. Look, to be honest, at the point where I got to do the final editing, I mean, this is why I didn't have another editor on this film, is because the budget by that point had run out on the filming production. So that's why I did the core of the editing myself. And so picking music we couldn't get music made specifically for the film, unfortunately. However, using a lot of different websites like Soundstripe and other websites, we were able to find artists that had made incredible music, and that was really fitting to the film. So it was a long process of me going through and sourcing out what music, listening to it, trying it out, getting ring of that one, putting in another one, and seeing what really worked to uplift that scene. And I think music is such an important aspect to film and bringing film to life. And it just drives the emotion home. And it's once you start putting in the music in, and then when you're watching the story in the editing, that's when, tears start flowing from me as an editor. So I must have cried about 20 or 30 times in the editing process of the film. But that definitely comes when you start adding in the music.
Yes, exactly. It's an important part of the film itself. Look, Sean, congratulations on These Two Hands, the story of Bowen therapy, screening in July as part of the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival. And we've been speaking to Sean Dobra, the director of the film. Thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you so much, Peter. It's been an absolute pleasure being with you.
All the best. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.